We're back again. Oh my goodness, we have new faces. There's like all these faces on the screen at this point. So it must be pretty important what we're doing. For everyone we're going to jump right in because we have a lot to talk about today. I'm Michael Dismuke with Continuing Missions. And that's the #1 fan site for Star Trek Adventures RPG, of course. And I'm also a freelance writer for Modifius. And this is Continuing Conversations, where we talk about anything and everything Star Trek Adventures RPG. And boy, do we have a topic for you today. But before we get into it, let's do the introductions. Al, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
How's it going? Al Spader, contributing writer for Star Trek Adventures. Been working with these guys for a while and excited to talk tonight.
That's right. Yet another super fan turned writer. What about you, Josh?
Hey, I'm Josh. Thank you so much for having me on tonight, guys. I am a game master and player of Star Trek Adventures. I run a lot of games for my kids and their friends, but I also get to play online, and I've really enjoyed playing in your game and Pioneer with Michael and Al. So thanks again.
Yeah, and you got to tell me, because I love it when I hear that kids are playing this game. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, it's so much fun. I mean, it's been cool because I started with my son and he really wanted to play himself. So he got to go to Starfleet Academy and, become a flight controller and pilot the ship. And we went through various adventures, some of which I'm sure, we'll talk about today. But now he's in a second group. So I have 2 groups going on in 2 different geographies. And he gets to play a Ferengi Borg first officer. And so that's really fun, is he's having fun with that. And, he's come up with fun names and, backstory for him. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's great. It's been a great game. I've run other games for kids, and I have to say, I really enjoy the way 2D20 and Star Trek Adventures plays with them.
Good. You are a good father, I think.
Oh, it's a tough job.
You taught your son correctly. All right. And now, of course, Jim, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Jim Johnson. I am the project manager and lead editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG, produced by Modifius Entertainment, and lifelong Star Trek fan. And Josh, I'm going to have to reach out to you at some point and talk about your experiences with running the game for kids, because my son's getting close to that age, and I think I need to get him into STA as soon as possible. So I'm going to pick your brain at some point if you're open to it.
Happy to. And I've heard some pretty awesome ideas from Al too about, mechanically how to simplify it for that age. So
very cool.
It sounds like we're going to have a future topic here to talk about. Okay.
I think so.
Okay. This is going to work. Honestly, it would, at some future time, I would love to watch the kids play. That would just be awesome, is to see them and do a live stream. I am willing to give all my technological know-how to make that happen. I think it might be one of the most popular. It would become one of the more popular Star Trek adventure streams if we could one day do that. Anyways, that's Dream World. Today, we have a topic of topics. In fact, it's such a great topic that Jim is going to run the interview. And what we're doing today is we're talking about Star Trek modules that have been published by Modifius. Why did I think that this was a great topic? Well, we've been out, Modifius has been doing Star Trek Adventures since 2017, 2018, roughly,
5 years,
right?
Yep.
5 years. And there's so much material coming out that I can tell you as a game master, it's impossible to keep up. I mean, I wish I could play every day just to get through every module. But what I don't want to see happen is that the modules that maybe came out a long time ago are forgotten, because there is some gold out there. And so what I challenged Al and Josh to do, and myself, is to pick our 3 favorite modules. Not saying that they're the best or the worst modules, but the ones that to us, we maybe want to play again because it was just so awesome the first time. And some of us have actually played these more than once, which shows you how powerful these are. So we'll give some cred to the writers of these modules. We'll talk a little bit about why it's our favorite. And Jim, take it from there. Go ahead. Ask us about our favorite modules. And
just to set the stage here, I didn't get the memo and I don't remember, honestly. Are we talking about only full-length adventures, or are we talking like individual adventures like within the mission briefs as well?
Yeah, I'm excluding mission briefs, right, Al, Josh? We're not talking mission briefs because that's a whole nother one, because I definitely have favorites of those also. So we're talking full-length adventures. Okay,
well, that's good. That helps set my expectations for this panel, because I know that just standalones we must be over the 60 mark right now, or somewhere close to it. I mean, we put so much content out over the last 5 years. I'm not patting myself on the back, but there's just a ton of stuff out there. And you add in the mission briefs, that's well over 120 discrete episodes that we've got available in some format. So it's not easy. I know it's a lot of content, and I'm just excited to hear what you guys are going to say about your favorites, because there's just so much, right? So I think we'll just jump into it now. So, of course, just to let the fans know, I recused myself from this conversation. That's why I'm seeing this, because I've had a hand in all of them, and I love them all for different reasons. And for me to pick the best three, I couldn't do that, because it would be doing a disservice to all the other ones. So I'm taking the pass tonight, and I'll just run the show here, basically. So I guess we could do kind of a Letterman kind of backwards of your top, like presumably the three of you have ranked your top three. So you've got your three favorites. So we'll start from the bottom up, and give me your number three. And I think for all of these, it would be useful to know the title, the author, the recommended era of play, even though I've tried to be really careful with most of the adventures to make them flexible enough so that you can modify them and drop them into any era, because we want them to be multi-purpose. So title, writer, era, and what about it did you love, right? What put it on your top three list, right? And we can just talk about like what are the players going to get out of it, what are the game masters going to get out of it, what potential pitfalls. Like, I don't want this just to be a love session, right? If you have constructive critical criticism and warnings for a GM, like if you're going to run this, be aware of X, Y, and Z, whatever. Let's just keep it open and fresh and cool. And I'm gonna just be completely arbitrary and go clockwise. So I'll start with Josh. What's your number three?
Okay, man, it's tough to put them in order. So I would just say, that there's ones that really loom large in my mind. It's not that they're better or worse than each other. So on that basis, I would start with A Cry from the Void, which I think was from the Strange New World supplement. And I played this with my kids group, and we just had so much fun with this. It took up several sessions. Something I really liked about it, well, I actually have to ask for ground rules, Michael and Jim, are we doing spoilers, or are we holding back? Are we going all in on what went down?
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it. We usually don't. I'm usually anti-spoiler, but I think this time we should do it.
Okay, that sounds good. So I just fell in love with Cry from the Void from the start. I felt like it had a really great sci-fi concept, and I'm kind of into, well, obviously, I'm sure a lot of us are into sci-fi movies, but I have this love for this old sci-fi movie, Solaris. It was a Russian movie. They remade it in, I think, with George Clooney. And it's a great book, and it's almost this real Star Trek setup, and it's about this sentient planet. And Cry from the Void has that at the core of the story, but you only discover that, partway through. Classic Star Trek setup. I think it's Next Generation is the era. Oh, and by the way, this is by Ian Lemke and Spring Netto. I really love the setup of this because it's got this great sci-fi concept, but then it has this kind of messy social conflict that is going on that planet. And there's secrets there too. So there's a Ferengi mining installation that's working on this sentient planet. And what are they really doing there? And why are they really doing it? And so there's just so much to explore. And as I mentioned, my son, the liberated Ferengi Borg, he had kind of a connection with this sort of, justice-seeking Ferengi boss, who's Lishka, who's running the facility. And so it's just, none of it is easy to sort out on a, values and Starfleet protocol driven way. And I just think the setup also of what you have to go through to really, solve the mystery and come out alive and, and really seek, the wellness of this planet, as well as, the other NPCs that you encounter, is so cool. So my kids ended up designing a submarine based on retrofitting a shuttlecraft, and I let them spend momentum to, add different features to it. And so we did this at a library because it's COVID. So we would meet in a public place. We go up on the whiteboard, we're all masked, and they're up there designing the sub. And it was so fun. And then we took it for a drive, and they had to, escape from the ocean and really come forth rescuing people and solving the mystery. And it was really fun. I loved all the elements, and I could totally imagine it going. What's that?
I have to ask, did you take pictures of the sub?
Oh, I think I actually did. I think I have them on my phone somewhere. I snapped them before they got rid of them.
Awesome.
I want them.
Yeah. I'll try to find that.
I'll put them up.
Excellent. Cool. So, Michael and Al, have you played this particular adventure, and do you have any additional comments to add to Josh's comments? It said Greg earlier. It threw me off.
I know. Yeah, it's my son's name.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just simply say, yeah, I played it, and I know Al was in it when we played it. The thing I liked most about it is what Josh just mentioned. The underwater aspect of it is something that we don't see a lot of in Star Trek, actually. And the submersible session was totally suspenseful and tension. And everything he said about the game is true. We had to play it a little different in that we didn't have Ferengis available because we're in a different galaxy. So I had to change the aliens, but I kept all the same premise. And it turned out to be a fascinating play. What do you think, Al?
Yeah, super exciting. Very, very tense when you're that deep underwater. And figuring out the crystal cocoons and all that was just fantastic. It was a lot of fun. My character really thrived in the social conflict at the end. He had a major character change based on that, and basically changed the character moving forward for the rest of the show.
You know what I never understood about it, which cracked me up in playing this module, and Josh, I don't know if you had it happen too, is everyone was stressed out about being underwater. Like, oh my God, you're in space all the time. Why are you freaking out about being underwater? I couldn't understand why aren't you afraid every day you're on your ship?
Yeah, I heavily adapted this one and ran it for my group last year. And what I thought was neat was that even though the episode itself is set in, I think, either the alpha or beta quadrant, I don't remember which one, but I just pulled it out wholesale and dropped it into a completely new region of space, but kept it with Ferengi and the other characters that were in the episode, just to add that little bit of like, what are they doing out here in the middle of nowhere, right? And then I think the whole underwater sequence was their favorite part, and that was a long session, but boy, it was really cool to get into the details of all the stuff that was happening. Great, so awesome. And Josh, just in terms of a game master approaching this particular episode, any warnings or concerns, anything that you had to do specifically to adapt it to make it work for your needs?
I think that one thing I had to do was really, I've heard you on this podcast talk about when your captain is an NPC, or should your captain be a PC. And in our case, with the kids groups, I really like the captain to be an NPC so that they can help enforce structure and really guide them. But I really wanted to take that guy out because I wanted them to really, grapple with the issues of what was going on there. So my captain was a Betazoid. And so I had him be overcome by the cry from the void, and just, he really needed the crew to go down on this planet and really, take care of this issue. So they were forced to then negotiate. So I think, it's that giving them the opportunity to really speak on behalf of the crew and make decisions. And, and it also helps if your captain is a PC, but I think that would be something, is really making sure they have the agency to get in there and negotiate with the Ferengi.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Very cool. And again, that was Cry from the Void, Ian Lemke and Spring Netto. And I believe that was from the Strange New Worlds mission compendium number 2 that is available out there right now. So thank you, Josh. Very awesome. So let's move on to Al. What's your number 3?
I'm going to roll with The Whole of the Law by Christopher L. Bennett. It's TOS era, though it is very easily set into any timeline whatsoever. And I ran this, I heavily adapted it, but just the idea of Thelema, which is the planetoid that is introduced in this module, is fascinating. It's very well designed. We have basically the light side and the dark side. Oh yeah, from the Strange New Worlds guide, that's right. We had so much fun. It's really designed to be almost like a shore leave type of episode, if you run it that way. But we had some fun. We put a casino on there, and there was a heist, and lots of fun stuff like that. But if you're following the words in here, step by step, it's really cool. Basically, people get kidnapped and brought to this underside of the dark side of Thelema, and they have to be rescued. And I really enjoyed, if you like really good science and math, there's like a whole thing in here about how your weight changes based on where you are on this planetoid. Really, really cool stuff. And once you get to the end, there's like multiple paths you can take, and there's like they really thought out the possibilities of what you could do as you're trying to rescue your teammates on the dark side of Thelema.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool. And Josh, Michael, have either of you had the opportunity to run this one? What were your experiences?
Yeah, ran it. It was great. Everything that Al said. The caution I'll give is it has the potential for a lot of violence because of the dark side. And so one of the things I did do is before I launched it, I checked what the tolerance level is with my people, because at the end, in our case, they ended up in basically a gladiatorial arena. And it was an amazing scene. Don't get me wrong. It was an amazing fight that bonded our chief security officer with the ops manager, and never go back. But there was definitely, I was like, okay, I knew when to cut scene. Like, I was like, okay, that's enough, because I'm not into rock 'em, sock 'em, hack 'em, slash 'em. So that's the only caution. Just talk to your team before you end up in that gladiatorial arena to see what kind of Trek show they like.
Cool. And Josh, have you had an opportunity to run this one?
No, I haven't run this one. It looked intimidating, especially, for my kids, just the idea of Thelema. It's like kind of a little bit of a mature idea, and so, but I maybe later on. So
once they go through puberty.
Yeah.
And Al, any concerns, any challenges as a game master to prepare this one for a group when you're getting into it?
I mean, I hate railroading groups, but this could end up being like your people might go all over the place, and you might have to come up with things on the fly to do while they're here, because it is just there's so much going on. I guess that would be one thing that I would caution prepare for. Have little activities that your crew can participate in along the way that might not necessarily be exactly where this points you.
To that point, I want to say that the mission does require you to split the party, and one party might end up not having as much fun because they're not in the action sequence. So I might recommend this module if like a bunch of players don't show up and you're left with only 2 or 3 players that night, run this module, because they're the ones who could end up on the dark side. That would be some advice.
Thanks for bringing that up. That's in my notes, and I just glanced over it. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice. Very cool. And again, that's The Whole of the Law. It's an original series adventure intended. Again, that's also in Strange New Worlds, and that's by Christopher L. Bennett, one of the more prolific Strange New Worlds writers. Or not Strange New Worlds, but Star Trek Adventures writers. But he's also a very prolific Star Trek novelist. So if you are into the Star Trek novels, he's written just a ton of stuff. So go check it out. He's also got a bunch of short stories in Analog and Asimov. So if you are hard science, he is your guy, because he's got some really cool stuff out there. Most of it's beyond me because I don't have the science, but really, really good writer. And I'm grateful that he's on board with us. All right, Michael, that comes to you. What's your number 3?
Sure. It would be one that came out recently in 2021, and it's Piers Beckley's The Burning module. And I had to pick that one not only because it's well written and very clear. It's a TOS era module, but I adapted it to TNG and again another galaxy, and that was very easy to do with it. What I liked about it strongly was the scientific concept. So in there, he has something called an antimatter nebula, which some of the more scientific people on our group went right away to explain, like, well, this is impossible. Do you really know? Aaron Pollier, basically. That's a shout out to you, man. But fortunately, my team, they're always not worried about if something's possible. They want to figure out why it's possible. So that created a really fun scientific endeavor of explaining how an antimatter nebula could even exist in the first place. But the reason that I really ended up liking this module was because I tried to put social conflict into every single story. Mm-hmm. And the one I chose to weave into this story and not really tell them I wove into it until the end was American exceptionalism, the idea of any country being better than the other. Mm-hmm. And I just let it go, and the group took it. Al and Josh were there, and so they could speak to what emotions came up from it. But I had to be very careful because I keep a very neutral stance, and I'm not a very political person myself. But the setting with the Kalak falling completely into exceptionalism created some really good situations, and it to me was one of the most memorable episodes, and let me gauge my crew and like, okay, what's their tolerance for social debate? That's one of the things that I really liked about it. So to me, the setting was great scientific ideas, a great new fearful opponent. The Kalak are definitely to be respected. They're the Klingons of this area, in my opinion. And I that's my number 3.
Very nice. Al, Josh, any thoughts on this one if you had an opportunity to run it?
I mean, I haven't run it, but I got a chance to play in it. And like Michael said, it's always exciting to be doing scientific stuff on the ship and then social stuff as well. And, we had a good time challenging each other's insight into different things. And, it's always hard to do it from a character perspective and not put a little bit of yourself into it. But we had a blast talking through things.
Nice. Josh, anything?
Yeah, I'm going to go so far as to actually list this as my number 2, just to get a jump on that. I just loved this module so much. I really enjoyed, the whole concept of these antimatter life forms, since we're doing spoilers here. So inside this nebula is this life form that it is made of antimatter. And I don't know, that idea is so interesting. And I'm not sure I had thought about that before. And I really love it when Star Trek gets really grounded in its science and it just springs off of things that we know and goes into something that might be possible. And it's just, I felt really bad for these organisms that, if they come into contact with any piece of normal matter, they're going to be destroyed. And so it's like, that was very, it was cool to feel protective of that. But I have to say, I really appreciate the design of this adventure and building into the social conflict and, the political questions that Michael highlighted. I really feel like, so I'm always looking for adventures that have starship combat. I really love starship combat. My kids are asking for it. So I'm prepping this adventure for my kids. Now that I've seen what it's like. And I just love the way that it is set up, because with Starfleet and Starfleet's values, sometimes you have to force the issue if you want starship combat in your game. And so the creation of the Kalak and their philosophy, which I think is, it's like the Klingons, but I think it's distinct from the Klingons. And it's a very interesting, social conceit that they are predators and that they are, they're willing to really go through a lot of brinksmanship and really just dominate the narrative and the battlefield, even unto death. And so they can even, I love how if you read the adventure carefully, Piers Buckley sets up what could be just an asymmetrical combat situation where if you're new to starship combat and this might be a great first adventure, because you could go up against a smaller scale Kalak vessel and it doesn't matter that you could overpower them, because they will just take it there and you'll have to grapple with it, even if you are stronger than they are in the situation. So I just love that about this adventure. And I think, with all the things going on with the science as well, it just makes for a really rich experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the rescue operation too. So, and then you had the piece where you have this multi-pronged rescue operation, and the creative solutions the players came up with were really fun too. To me, just a really well-rounded module.
Very cool. And so, Michael, I'll just wrap up with you before I'll ask Josh the same question, since it was his number 2. This has kind of worked out nicely. Any challenges or warnings or for Game Master notes, preparation heading into it? Anything you'd add?
Yeah, back to the theme of violence, since the Kalak are such. I added and pushed into it that they only viewed power. They only respected power. That you actually had to come up with a powerful solution to even get them to like you. But even then, they're still going to tell the story their own way. So be careful with that. Check with your crew. I did multiple checks during the game, a couple pauses because of that. So, and it worked out well.
Very cool. And Josh, anything else you'd like to add about that in terms of prep, especially for prepping for a group of kids?
I actually think this is a great one for a group of kids. And I would just say that, you want to have gotten through, if you're going to do the Starship combat, which I think is a big part of it, you want to have covered the basics. And then this is a great intro to that. But you wouldn't want this to be, I think, your first module, maybe with any play group. Certainly let alone with a group of kids. I think you'd want to get those basics in more of like a planetary situation before you go into the Starship combat.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. All right. Well, that was The Burning by Piers Beckley. That is a original series adventure. That is a standalone. So that's available on Drive-Thru RPG and both of the Modiphius websites, all by itself, just a standalone adventure. That came out last June, I think, June 2021, I think, somewhere in that range. That was Michael's number 3 and Josh's number 2. So Al, we're back to you. What's your number 2 on your list?
I'm going to run with also from the Strange New Worlds book, Football by Andrew Perengreen. And this module is a very interesting module because it deals with spirituality in a way that, aside from Deep Space Nine, you really don't see in Star Trek very much. Mm-hmm. In that you find a planet where there are these demons that are attacking civilians. There are these angels flying around. And I think that just conceptually, it's a very different mindset to get into. And when I ran this shortly before, actually, Michael ran it for our group, it's really well set up. Like, it gives you ideas for different spiritual activities that different species might be doing on the ship. And at the time I had an Andorian and a Trill on the ship, and they really embraced this as they were making their pilgrimage to this planet, which is like a central religious planet for many different species in the sector. And I like how open-ended it is. Like, these angels and these demons, like, it's very psychological, thriller-ish. And like, I had my characters like seeing their family members' faces on them and things like that. And I would say that they got a kick out of this module.
Very cool. Thank you. And Michael and Josh, if either of you had the opportunity to run this one, what were your experiences? Michael?
I did. Yeah. So, and just to add a little bit more spoiler to it too, is that basically the entity in the planet is transforming into what people feel are their deities. So is it real angels and demons? No. I mean, you could do whatever you want in your game, but the creature is trying to create peace by bringing people into religious unity. And what I really thought was cool about this game is exactly what Al put on it. If you're trying to flesh out your characters and really get the crew to know each other, and I love doing it. I love looking at values. I love hearing backstory more than the current oftentimes. Everybody got to kind of shine where they are from a spiritual point of view. Even the atheists were able to talk about where they're at. And I'm telling you right now that was the second game we played in our third season, which had a lot to do with spirituality. And it set the tone for so many conversations in 12 other games, even to now. So great for character development, that game. Lights are flying on me. I guess he likes it too.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's by a fly.
And Josh, have you had an opportunity to look at this one or to use it?
No, I haven't had that opportunity yet. I did read through the play report, which Michael is so good about cataloging from Pioneer's game, and I read the whole narrative of the game that Michael and Al played, and I remember thinking, I have like a soft spot in my heart for Star Trek V, and just like the big themes that are, that can be there in Star Trek stories. And it's just so amazing that you can bring so much of that into, tabletop role-playing games. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll just add that I remember when I was putting together the book for Strange New Worlds, I had reached out to a whole bunch of authors at the time. I mean, this was 4 years now. I can't even remember. It's been a while. And I remembered I said, send me pitches, and I got 12 or 14 pitches. And this is one of the ones that really resonated with me because it does address faith in ways that we don't see a lot in Star Trek, and that I don't see a lot in pitches. Right, a lot of writers just tend to avoid faith discussions, and which is unfortunate, I think, because like DS9 did a really great job, I think, in presenting faith in kind of a non-judgmental way to say, look, different species have faith, and we're going to address this because this is part of the human condition. Certainly, I mean, you may be atheist, and that's perfectly all right. There are other faith practices out there. There are non-faith practices, etc. There have been faiths on this planet for thousands and thousands of years, and they're not going to go away anytime soon. Much less 300 years before the original series is beginning, right? But this episode really appealed to me. I haven't had a chance to run it yet or play it, but when I was editing it and putting it together, and working with Andy on it, it was like, wow, this is really great, because like just as I was editing it in my mind, my game master brain, I was like, oh, my players would have so much fun doing this and having these thoughtful discussions, like you were saying, Michael. And I appreciate it because it's a little different from the other adventures in the book, in that it just has a very different tonal focus. And I think that's one of the strengths of Star Trek, right? Not so much Star Trek Adventures, but Star Trek is like, you can watch any season of a series, and you're going to get so many different story opportunities, and it's just cool. I think I'm just glad we have it in there. So great.
Thanks for keeping it in there. It would have been a loss because it was.
I mean, thanks for Andy for writing it and getting it in there, and then of course CBS for being okay with it and improving it and being willing to tackle some of these subjects and being open to it. So, Al, any other thoughts? Any concerns with this one going into a group?
I mean, I think this is the type of mission where you definitely want to have a discussion with your group before you run it. How comfortable are you talking about these things? And, if everybody's on board with it and knowing that we're doing it strictly from a narrative point of view through our characters, you're going to see some pretty amazing interactions along the way. One thing that I would recommend is if you're a fan of doing cold opens for your show that you're running, do a montage of the characters doing their different little faith things on the ship, and that could be any different activity that they see fit. But I think that if you have that discussion and they're all good, set the tone with the montage, I think you're going to get a lot out of this episode.
Very nice. Excellent. And again, that's Footfall by Andy. I think it's Peregrine. Might be Peregrine A. I need to bug him. He works on Dune. And I'll have to bug him for his actual pronunciation of his last name. But again, that's also in Strange New Worlds. So Strange New Worlds seems to be the popular go-to for this evening so far. But Michael, tell me what you got for your number 2.
All right. Well, I'll break away from Strange New Worlds. In fact, I'm gonna throw a little twist on it, because this module was actually a free one that many people may not know about, but I have to label it as 1B, because honestly, I was fighting between this and the other one that's my number 1. And this was Michael Duxbury's Ghost Rider, which first premiered in Modifia issue 3 in spring 2018. This one, why I liked it. So basically the premise, I'll just read the premise. The away team receives a rescue broadcast from this woman named Marina, the daughter of famed philosopher George Lazopoulos, who claims to be held hostage by the artificial intelligence of her deceased father's moon base. The AI is called the Ghost Rider. It seeks to publish one last work in the name of George. Marina, still mourning about her father's loss, disagrees. The away team must mediate the argument and try to come up with a good resolution. So we're talking about copyright law. And hey, we're all writers. And so I was like, wait a second, how could this possibly be a good episode? But I was new to the game. I said, let me go ahead. It was our first season. I said, let me go ahead and try to run one of those non-action episodes and see how it goes. What really made it drive at home, I have to give a shout out to one of our players, Juan Buchanan, who's written on our site some articles. He was a teenager at the time when he played it. He played a holographic officer. So basically similar to Measure of a Man, that kind of discussion came up about what rights does a holographic sentience have. And the discussion, and then getting into the legality and the Starfleet protocol and Federation law, it was one of our favorite episodes for everyone who played it. So it's free. It's a short little module written into Modiphius issue 3, but it's every time I think about favorite episode, that's pops up in my mind as one of my top favorite.
Very nice, very nice. And Josh, Al, either of you have the opportunity to read it or game master it?
No, that was before I was even into the game. Or really, I've not heard of it. One sounds really, really cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance either.
Yeah, check it on continuing missions. You can get the link to the Medifia PDF. But if you all like a game without a lot of dice rolling, it's cool. One of the things that did come out of it was their solution ended up playing 3 seasons later. I'm not going to ruin it. You could always go back and read my write-up on it, but it's still that at one episode still impacts our show to this day, our game to this day.
Nice. And any concerns or challenges for it as a game master to prepare for it, to drop it in?
Honestly, no. In this one, I just suggest that you have a group that are willing to fall forward into their characters and act. It's totally improv city and legal arguments, and build the character who's the AI ghostwriter. I decided to build him as a kind of like a turn of the century steampunk, character in a British accent to really give him this Shakespearean flair. And so it just became a very well acted episode too. I can't think of any negatives or dangers. It's not a pew pew module at all.
Yeah, very nice. And again, that's Michael Duxbury. That's Ghostwriter. That's available for freezies in Medifia magazine, which is available for free download. And I'm pretty sure that's on DriveThruRPG. I think it's also on the 2 web stores. So not hard to find if it's, and like Michael said, there's a link on continuing missions. So go check that out if you have an opportunity. So cool. That is the top 3s, top 2s. So I guess if we had a drum roll, we'd be heading into your all-time top favorite adventures to date, right? As of right now, mid-March 2022, knowing that there's a whole bunch more on the way. But for now, given the corpus of work that we have available to us at the moment, Josh, what is your shining star? What is your number 1?
So my number 1 is actually a pretty short module. I just think it is just chef's kiss in its conception, and that's the Kobayashi Maru by Joe Kreil. It's a TOS era episode, but really you could adapt this to any generation or era. They're referencing it even in the latest season of Discovery, far into the future. So it's been kept around. And I think we all know, the iconic legacy of that test. And I remember actually the day that it came out, I got the email update from Modiphius and I downloaded it and I started reading it. And I just love this conception of how to really make that trope from the movies and now shows come alive, while keeping even the ambiguous legacy of the test and bringing that into the game in a new way. We know that Kirk won by cheating, basically, and there's been a whole movie, or more, debating that. And then, I think that this episode, since again we're doing spoilers, this episode really forces the players to deal with cheating and deal with the integrity of the test and not just face the no-win scenario as a technical exercise, which is fun. Here's what we're going to try. We're going to try this. We're going to try that, but really just come up to grips with what are they supposed to be doing in that room. And when there's someone in there that's violating the whole integrity of what this is all about, what's their response to that? And I actually was just thinking back to the Kelvinverse movie, the first, new Star Trek, where, Kirk is hauled before the academic committee and he's like defending his performance to, Admiral Tyler Perry and basically saying like, I found this awesome solution. And Spock is like, no, you actually failed. You didn't really get it. And I think that this just raises so many possibilities for players to each struggle with this in their own way. So it's a really great setup. I also think from a mechanical standpoint, again, like, the burning, I think it's a great module to try out Starship Combat. Again, it has that asymmetrical relationship where they're going to lose. So then you can just go crazy. You don't have to, really think through the encounter design too hard. You can just like throw all these ships at them and take the mechanics for a test drive, and it might be over really soon, but then you're going to have another social element and really a values based dilemma to deal with. And you're going to come out of that room, I think, with some kind of iconic experience that's going to be unique to your table. So I just, even though it's a small, module, I just loved it so much.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Al, Michael, have you had an opportunity to run it or do anything with it?
No, he just whet my appetite, though. I like what he said about, to me, if I was now to have to play Ship Battle for the first time, what a perfect module, because there's no real threat to the players, but they get to learn the mechanics. So I'm keeping that in the back of my mind.
Mm-hmm. Al, any comments?
Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance. I thought it was just the scenario. The cheating thing sounds like it's a really cool twist and could lead to some cool social interactions.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, this was one we worked on. This was almost a no-brainer. Like, of all the convention adventures that you could put together, why not make it the Kobayashi Maru, right? I mean, we threw in some pre-gens, and Joe did a fantastic job presenting the scenario as it is, right, as we know it and love it from Star Trek II, but added that little extra spin to it with the actual cadet in there cheating their way through it. And then how did the player characters react to that, right? Like, all of Starfleet's best morals are being put to the test here, not just their individual morals, but also Starfleet. Like, how is this going to reflect on Starfleet if they get caught? Do they help the cheater? Do they call him out? What do you do, right? And I just love that moral dilemma. It's just so classic. And Josh, you're absolutely right. It's been mentioned in Discovery and in Prodigy and in Lower Decks. And in fact, I think one of the more recent episodes of Picard mentioned it. I think Admiral Picard mentioned it. Well, not to get too far into the spoilers, but there was a moment where he's talking about his Academy responsibilities, thinking about making modifications to Kobayashi Maru. And so it is like completely ingrained in Star Trek. Like, if you are familiar with Star Trek, you know what Kobayashi Maru is. If you're a casual fan, you may not know, but go watch Star Trek 2. You'll know within the first half an hour of the movie, right? Watch the first half hour, you're done. You know what Kobayashi Maru is.
One of the things I've been doing more of, because there's so many modules to play and I can't get them fast enough, is combining two modules, or a module and a mission brief. And now that you got my mind going, I could see even a seasoned crew maybe having a flashback to what their Kobayashi Maru experience was as a B plot story that somehow plays into the greater one. So now my mind's going. So very good.
Inside the module, Joe Kreil actually has this idea that if you adapt it to the next generation era, that it might take place on the holodeck. And that's what we did. And it was so much fun. And then seeing that happen on Prodigy was just mind-blowing. That was so cool. And so you could even have a ship that's doing one module, and then maybe there's a cadet character, or maybe there's a midshipman cadet, someone who has reason to take that test right there on the ship, and they could just go into the holodeck and have that experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll say that if you have an opportunity to read a classic Star Trek novel by Julia Ecklar, it's a novel titled The Kobayashi Maru. And what it is the original series characters are caught in a very difficult situation. And to pass the time, they talk about their experiences doing the Kobayashi Maru. So you get to hear how Chekhov, Sulu, and Scotty, how they handled their version of it. And so it's like three very different stories about the same thing. And it's a fun read. So if you get a chance to check it out, I know it's on Kindle. You can probably find it at any used bookstore. I mean, it's been out forever, but great fun read if you love the original series cast, especially. So great. So then, Josh, any warnings or concerns about this as a game master heading into it, knowing, like you were saying, that this is going to be potentially starship heavy combat, and historically Starship combat for STA has been a bit of a learning curve for a lot of people to navigate. So what are your suggestions or recommendations there?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly as a game master, familiarizing yourself with those mechanics, which I love. I mean, I'm not suggesting that Starship Combat is not fun. I love doing it, and that's one of the reasons I love this module. But I think just mentally getting ready, you might even take the test yourself, on paper, just sort of like play the ships and feel how the mechanics, go through, what kind of moves you might want to make to really, bring the threat in that scenario. I would say that, more like from a role-playing or social standpoint, standpoint, I think it's really a great idea with this, almost on a session zero level, to kind of talk about, okay, we know this is a no-win scenario, and maybe the players are thinking on well, I'm going to win it, but you might then ask, what would it mean for you to win this? What is really winning this test? And how do you pass the test? Like, you might not be able to win, but can you pass? And so one thing I did was I threw in this mission directive: be worthy of Starfleet, so that would sort of telegraph to them that they're not just in there to win this on the points. They're really there to demonstrate the values, just like Spock said, and that Kirk was held accountable to in that great scene of that movie. So I would just say to really, especially if your players are, I think playing it at a convention would be amazing. It's really casual and fun, and if everything blows up, that's okay. But I think if you're playing with players that are really committed to having a heroic arc, try to find in advance, plant the seeds for that potential heroic arc for them that doesn't involve them, walking out having, beaten the unbeatable scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. Last thing I'll add is that only because this has come up in conversation on, I think either the forums or Reddit, it's been somewhere recently, there's been a conversation about how to run cadets and young characters, and my suggestion was, not to make this sound like a plug, because I'm really not trying to make this sound like a plug, but the new player's guide has a ton of new advice that Nathan Dowdell presented for cadet characters. I think the Kobayashi Maru would be a great culmination of that. Like, create some cadet characters, run them through some academy episodes or some academy scenarios or something, and then run Kobayashi Maru and just see how they do, right? Individually or sequentially or whatever. Michael, I love your idea of doing it as a flashback. Again, that harkens back to the novel that I was talking about. That would be a great way to give player characters an evening of really cool stuff to do. Like, if not everybody can show up one night, say, hey, maybe you're sitting around 10 forward having a conversation. Hey, how did you win Kobayashi Maru, or how did you lose? What was your experience, right? Everybody at the academy probably has that common experience. And that's a great way to build some scenes. So again, that's Kobayashi Maru by Joe Kreil. I believe it's Kreil. Joe Kreil, Kobayashi Maru. That's another free adventure available on DriveThruRPG and the two Modiphius sites. So go check it out. It'll cost you nothing but time to check it out. So Al, we'll move over to you. What is your top hot adventure on your list?
I'm going. This was an easy choice for me. I think it's A Star Beyond the Stars by Marco Rafala. It is the starter set module. And I started taking notes as I was looking through it this week, and I ended up with 2 pages of notes of things that I found really exciting about it. But I think if you're looking to learn the game step by step, it is by far the easiest way to do this. Like, it starts off, this is a task, this is the difficulty, and it starts building upon that as you move through all the acts. And just like, this is a 3-part adventure, so really it's 3 adventures in one little booklet. And I think the story is really fascinating. There's kind of like an epic conclusion, and it introduces ship combat. It's really, really good for learning the game.
Excellent. And you caught me in the middle of doing some research to just make sure I got the title right. Michael and Josh, have you had an opportunity to run this one, or at least read it? Any thoughts or perspectives on this particular campaign?
I have not had a chance to run it. All I can speak to, though, is I have run Marco Raffaele games, but I'm going to plug his book. He has a book called How Fire Ends, and I read that. It's a novel, and wow, he's a writer. It's the first time I've read a novel where I felt I was reading a poem the entire time, meaning that his use of words, his creativity. So I just got to plug the writer of this module and encourage people to go to read How Fire Ends, his novel that's out.
Josh?
I haven't had a chance to run it, but I've read it. I definitely, that was an early, adventure. I was trying to wrap my head around in Grok how to run it. And then I've actually been directing people to check out that starter set as a way to sort of cheaply get into the game and, do some, not homework, but, learning on their own of how the system works. And I think it's great for them to see that adventure as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Marco's writing. I wish I could get him to do more, but I know he's busy being a novelist, which is perfectly great because his novel is fantastic, and that's exactly what I was researching for Michael when Al wrapped up. I was like, I needed to remember what the title of his novel was because I read it a couple of years ago. I had the fortune to meet Marco at Gen Con years ago, and then I was in Chicago on a business trip before, in the before times. And he and his wife just happened to be in Chicago at the same time while he was on book tour. And I was like, well, let's go get a drink. Let's have dinner or something. And it just worked out great. But love his stuff. Would love to see more of his stuff. I can't say enough about the starter set. The starter set was kind of Sam Webb's swan song as line manager of Star Trek Adventures before he moved on to more responsibilities at Modiphius. And so he was primarily the lead on it. I didn't have a huge amount of involvement in the starter set other than just, help coordinating some of the things. But I know that I drive a lot of people to it because it's such a great, not to sound like a plug, but it's a great value. You have so much stuff in the box, but the adventure itself is one of the only adventures that we have that's really written specifically to teach you the game as you work your way through it. It's kind of like the quick starters in a way. So I'd say definitely check it out. You can get the box, the whole deal all together. It's available on PDF, and then the campaign by itself is available. If you just want the campaign, you can go buy that as a PDF. And Michael, if I'm not mistaken, I think we're still running that deal on continuing mission for a discount on the starter set. So like if you're looking for an inexpensive way to get into the game, and you've already looked at the quick starters, certainly check out the starter set because it's like Al said, it's everything you need. Al, any warnings or concerns about it as a new game master or experienced game master, whatever?
Just be ready to create after, because there's an ending, but it's not really an ending. So just be ready to add more to the story, because it really just builds off into this big, awesome story that you could create afterwards.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Thank you. And so, Michael, that brings us to you to close it up. What's your number one favorite adventure of all the Star Trek adventures that are out there?
Sure. Again, I'm big into character development. Anyone who plays in my games know my favorite scenes are when the characters are talking and there's no dice rolling. And this one, I guess Christopher Bennett gets 2 wins tonight, I think, if our count is correct. And it's TNG era. And it's callback yesterday. And I have to say that, I've been playing this game since 2018. I've been watching the social media. This is the one that keeps coming up with a popular reaction from people who play it. It's, to me, probably, if I was to say what module do people talk about the most, I think it's this one. Why? First of all, the picture behind me is art from this person here. It's not Star Trek art, but this was the setting for our game. And basically the premise and how I adapted it for our game was there's a Ferengi thought maker involved. For anybody who's never heard of what a Ferengi thought maker is, it makes thoughts. It's technology that basically can zone in and extract thoughts. Well, the Romulans got a hold of a thought maker and they were trying to extract information from key members of our crew who went down on an away mission on this planet. So the thought maker is hiding the Romulans from their view. And now all of a sudden, as they walk through these mysterious smoky ruins, the characters they get separated and they start having interactions with people from their past, some good, some bad. The players took it. They just took it. And weirdly, sometimes I think every game master has it. When you have people under mind influence, they know it. In this one, the way it's written, they didn't know what was going on, whether it was real or it was fake. And even at the end of the module, when they walked away, they weren't sure which interactions were real. And that to me was mind-blowing. So Christopher Bennett wrote it and constructed the module in such a way to make it believable, but the characters don't feel that they're being, like, some people don't like mind control. And it didn't make them feel mind controlled. It didn't make them do anything out. It was purely them conversing with their inner demons, and in the form of their antagonist, their enemies. So again, just a brilliant module. Everybody who played it still talks about it, and it gave me insight into their characters, changing the values that I was able to use to this day. So that's one of my favorite modules.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you. And Josh, Al, have you had an opportunity to run this one, read it, look at it, anything?
I've read it. I haven't been able to run it. It sounds like tons of fun.
I haven't run it yet, but I do hear people still talking about it in Michael's game. So it sounds really, really interesting. And I think developing that backstory for a character is really, really important in a game. So it sounds like a really good tool for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things I really appreciate about Christopher's writing is that, especially for the Star Trek Adventures game, like as a novelist, he understands character and he understands how to present opportunities and present scenes so that characters have to do something with it. And it's not the pew pew, it's not the shoot 'em up, it's not heavy duty action back and forth. It's that interpersonal drama that makes Star Trek so rich and interesting. And like when I got the draft from him, I'm like, okay, this is so easy. It's just, I mean, not only does he write clean copy, right, but he writes really compelling scenes, and like he understands, like what's weird, and I hate to out him like this, but I don't think he'll mind. Is like I don't think he's actually had an opportunity to play the game to any significant level, and so he's able to he consumed the core book and all the other stuff, and he's writing these great adventures, and it's just great to see that they're being used and like. Michael, that you're getting it right, that you're able, and your players are getting so much out of it. So it's just exciting to hear.
Well, I'll give Game Masters. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give Game Masters one other insight to really mess with the players in this game. Make a couple of the antagonists real. And that really threw them off. Is by the captain, who's a Romulan on our ship, had a confrontation with his rival Romulan captain, and in the end, the rival Romulan captain goes over the cliff, but since other people, and so dies, but other people, having interactions with real Romulans and then phantasms, he wasn't sure if he ever even had that battle. But so much came out in it. So really don't make everything phantasm, don't make everything real, mix them up. And that also unsettles the players as they try to figure out what they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very cool. All right. Well, that is a great half hour or so of us going around and talking about our favorite episodes. That's we covered 8 out of probably 50 to 60 different adventures that are available out there right now for Star Trek Adventures. This is 8 of the big ones for this particular panel. So
our group, and I'll say, I think I mentioned it before, we're on our 39th or 40th game right now of Pioneer, and we've played 30 modules or mission briefs so far. Wow. And again, we're not even through half of them at this point. Yeah. So these all of them have been amazing, and we have good times with all of them. But the reasons why these stand out is because they keep popping up in my mind and I keep pulling back to them. So this is actually an hour, just so you know, Jim. This was so much fun. It was actually almost an hour.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, hey, there you go. Let's see. Any other thoughts? I'll just add that I've been really intentional as the line editor and the project manager to provide as much of a variety as possible in terms of the adventures. A lot of different voices, a lot of different eras of play, a lot of different focuses. I've tried to keep the format relatively consistent, but some writers do different things in terms of like presenting content or presenting useful content, and just hopefully there's something for everybody. It's just like any Star Trek series. You'll find the episodes that you love and the episodes that are like, okay, that was interesting, and then there's ones that you just don't care for. That's going to be true for the standalones, I think, and that's okay. Not everyone is going to knock it out of the park. But then at the same time, not everyone's going to be shades of gray, right? So not to pick on that one too much, but that's the one that just comes to mind, other than maybe, Meridian or Spock's Brain or something. But you know what? Even those episodes, somebody loves them for some reason. There's something for everybody everywhere. So let me just go around one more time here real quick. Josh, any last words? Anything you want to plug? Anything else to say about Star Trek Adventures?
There's just so many adventures I still want to play, and I've deliberately held back on even reading the Shackleton adventures. I've read like everything else in that book except the adventures, because I know that we're going to do them. So I my selections aren't even part of that saga. It's just such a embarrassment of riches out there in terms of the content.
Awesome. Al.
Yeah, I mean, I had some honorable mentions. I do think that the 2 quick starts are also really, really well done and designed to really hold your hand through learning the game from both a player and a GM perspective. So I would recommend checking those out as well. But yeah, more missions, the better, and don't be afraid to adapt them as needed. Maybe you only need the first act, maybe you only need the third act, but they are there for you, so have fun with them.
Mm-hmm. And Michael, why don't you bring us home?
Yeah, and maybe you only need the art too. I'm going to add that too. Sometimes the art is enough for me to build a story off of and use. I want to give a shout out to Strange New Worlds, because I noticed that we had quite a few stories pulled from that. Mm-hmm. And to me, we have Boldly Go, which is a compendium. You got Strange New Worlds. Now you have the Shackleton Expanse. I have to say that Strange New Worlds is actually still my favorite because it has the most adaptable stories in it. So if people are looking to create their own campaign and maybe they don't want to do the Shackleton Expanse campaign or they already did it, Strange New Worlds, I used a lot out of there. I forget the count of stories I've used from that one. So a lot out there. And I have to back up too. We're going to talk later about mission briefs in the same format. I think that would be appropriate to do because that's a whole nother beast for the experienced game master or a very creative group. But Jim, I think we covered it. I think we're going to have to do another one of these in maybe a year after we played a few more games and talk about our new 3 favorite or something. I think.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, so I want to say thank you to Josh and Al for joining us tonight. I hope you had a good time. We'd love to have you back, I'm sure. And hopefully this gives the fans that are watching everything an opportunity to enjoy some fresh perspectives and to hear some other talking heads besides Michael and I as we do it week after week. So
we have a tradition Michael, we have to keep. We have to keep with the tradition.
I was heading to you for that.
Okay, good. We got to shout out the brick and mortars. I'm big into the brick and mortars, small businesses, supporting them. We're going to shout out 2 today because this was such a huge episode. So the 2 I want to shout out, Sean Ubinger, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. They wanted to shout out Miniature Market in St. Peters, Missouri. So thank you, Miniature Market, for being a brick and mortar that supports Star Trek Adventures, and sounds like it probably has a lot of miniatures too. So that's really cool. I know a lot of our fans do the miniatures. The second one, Brent Knorr shouts out the Century Box in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So that's awesome that we were able to get 2 brick and mortars in 2 different countries in North America today. So thank you again to the fans and the retailers out there who are keeping RPG and board games alive.
Absolutely. I'll just thank I'll thank all the fans for watching the show and for providing us feedback. And a very special thank you to Josh and to Al for taking your time out tonight and joining us. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your input and your insights. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks absolutely. All right. Live long and prosper, y'all. Be safe, be well. Catch you all next time.